The United States covers 3.8 million square miles. Most people see the interstates, the airports, the national park gift shops. But this country has wilderness in quantities that are difficult to comprehend. Forests older than the Republic. Lakes deep enough to swallow skyscrapers. Mountain ranges where a person can walk for days without crossing a road. And across those landscapes, scattered from the Outer Banks to the Cascades, there are places where people walk in and do not walk out. A 512-acre ranch in Utah where cattle tracks stop dead in fresh snow with nothing at the end of the trail. A volcanic lake in Oregon so deep and so feared by indigenous tribes that they refuse to speak of it to outsiders. An entire English colony, 117 men, women, and children that vanished from a barrier island, leaving behind a single word carved into wood. And in the mountains of Vermont, a ghost town where the state dissolved the government in 1937 and the forest took everything back, and then 5 people disappeared in 5 years in ways that no one has ever been able to explain. Make sure to stick with us until we get to that story because it is number 1 on this list. If you are into deep dives on forgotten places and unsolved geography, hit that subscribe button now because we cover stories like this every single week. Today we are counting down 12 U.S. locations where people vanish without a trace. Let's go. Number 12. The Bridgewater Triangle. The swamp where spirits dwell. 200 square miles of southeastern Massachusetts. One of the most densely populated states in the country. And right in the middle of the suburbs, there is a 17,000-year-old swamp that the Wampanoag people called Hockomock, which translates to the place where spirits dwell. Cryptozoologist Loren Coleman drew boundaries around this zone in 1983 and named it the Bridgewater Triangle. Since then, the catalog of strangeness has only grown. UFO sightings documented since 1908, Bigfoot-like creatures in Hockomock Swamp, giant birds with wingspans up to 12 feet, cult activity and ritualistic animal killings in the Freetown Fall River State Forest. In 1998, a headless cow was found in those woods. In 1994, a sworn law enforcement officer reported a triangular craft with red and white lights overhead. All of this in a state known for Harvard and clam chowder. You can visit every site, no admission fees. The swamp does not charge. Number 11, Skinwalker Ranch. The ranch that eats its cattle. In 1994, a family named Sherman bought a 512-acre cattle ranch in the Uinta Basin of northeastern Utah, bordering the Uinta and Ouray Indian Reservation. Within months, the Shermans reported seeing UFOs, finding surgically mutilated cattle, and encountering an enormous wolf that absorbed multiple rifle rounds without flinching. But here is the detail that stops people cold. The Shermans reported following cattle tracks through fresh snow, hoof prints in a clean line across the field that simply stopped. No animal at the end. Broken branches overhead in the treetops, as if something had lifted the cows straight up. The family fled after 18 months. Robert Bigelow, a Las Vegas real estate magnate, bought the property for $200,000 in 1996 and installed round-the-clock surveillance through his National Institute for Discovery Science. The investigation eventually drew the attention of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency, which secretly funded further research. The Ute and Navajo tribes had been warning about this patch of desert for centuries. The ranch is now privately owned, gated, and monitored by cameras. You cannot visit. It does not want you there. Number 10. Crater Lake, the melting man and the lake that watches. The deepest lake in the United States sits inside a volcanic crater in southern Oregon. 1,943 feet deep. No inlet, no outlet, just rain and snowmelt filling a hole left behind when Mount Mazama collapsed 7,700 years ago. The Klamath, Modoc, and Yahooskin tribes considered this lake a place of immense spiritual danger. Their legends describe it as a battleground between the chief of the underworld and a sky spirit. Wizard Island, rising from the water, is said to be the underworld chief's severed head. In January 1975, a photographer named Charles McCullers set out on a winter expedition to Crater Lake. He never returned. 18 months later, hikers found partial remains near Bybee Creek, 12 miles from the trailhead. There had been 102 inches of snow on the ground when he disappeared. All that was left were pants and socks with shin and toe bones sitting neatly inside. No torso, no skull, no shirt. A ranger who found the remains called McCullough the melting man of Crater Lake. In 1944, a Grumman torpedo plane flying in formation on a clear day simply vanished over the water. No distress call, no wreckage. The park is open seasonally. A hemlock stump called the Old Man of the Lake has been floating vertically in the water for over 100 years. Rangers do not touch it. Apparently the weather turns when they try. Number 9. Olympic National Park. The rainforest that swallows people whole. Nearly 1 million acres of temperate rainforest, glaciers, and 73 miles of untouched coastline on Washington's Olympic Peninsula. The Hoh rainforest inside the park receives up to 14 feet of rain a year. Trees here are 300 to 400 years old, and people disappear into it. On June 24, 2006, Gilbert Gilman, a 47-year-old ex-Army paratrooper, parked his car at the Staircase Ranger Station for what was supposed to be a short walk to take photographs. He wore casual clothes, lightweight shoes, and carried no pack. A park ranger was the last person to see him. Despite a 10-day search, not a single trace of Gilman was ever found. Years later, an investigation discovery program raised the possibility that Gilman may have been a victim of serial killer Israel Keyes, who had lived in nearby Nia Bay since 2001 and held backcountry permits for Olympic. In October 2022, Laura Mack, 35, entered the backcountry alone, bound for the Enchanted Valley. She never came back. The Staircase area where Gilman vanished had already claimed 2 hikers in the 1980s. Neither was found either. 3 disappearances from the same trailhead across 3 decades. The forest just kept its mouth shut. Number 8. Mount Shasta. The mountain that opens doors to nowhere. Someone dug a 60-foot hole into the side of Mount Shasta. By hand. At night, using a ladder and buckets and a makeshift pulley system. U.S. Forest Service agents found it roughly a decade ago. Nobody knows who did it or what they were looking for. That detail tells you everything about this mountain. Mount Shasta is a 14,162-foot active stratovolcano in Northern California's Cascade Range, and it sits 15 miles out of alignment with every other peak in the chain for reasons geologists cannot explain. The Wintu, Klamath, Modoc, and Shasta peoples all consider it sacred, a threshold between the physical and spiritual worlds. In 1905, a book claimed that survivors of a lost continent called Lemuria live in tunnels beneath the mountain. By 1987, the harmonic convergence turned Mount Shasta into a New Age mecca. At least 11 people have vanished from Siskiyou County since 1986, across an area 3 times the size of Connecticut. Carl Herbert Landers, 69, an experienced outdoorsman, disappeared near Lake Helen in 1999. 25 years later, not a single clue has surfaced. John Neza, 80, had summited Shasta over 40 times before he vanished in 1965. In the town below, the visitor center's books on myths and legends outnumber the hiking guides. Number 7. Yosemite National Park. America's most beautiful trap. Yosemite holds more open missing persons cold cases than any other unit in the entire national park system. More than 30 people gone in a park that attracts roughly 4 million visitors a year. The first recorded case dates to 1909, when a man named F.P. Shepard vanished near Glacier Point. The cases have never stopped. In 1981, 14-year-old Stacy Aris walked away from the Sunrise High Sierra camp after asking her father and another group member to join her. Both declined. She was never seen again. In 2011, George Pinka, 30, became separated from his hiking group near the top of Upper Yosemite Falls, a 2,425-foot cascade. He vanished. In 2016, Peter Jackson paid for a campsite at White Wolf and never returned at the end of his reservation. 3 years later, his backpack was found in the Ackerson Meadow area, miles away in a completely different drainage. Jackson himself has never been located. Since 2013, Over 1,100 missing person reports have been filed across Yosemite and neighboring Sequoia and Kings Canyon. Most resolve, some do not. The granite walls and rushing rivers that make Yosemite one of the most photographed places on Earth are the same features that make finding a body nearly impossible. A person can lie in a crevice 20 feet from a trail and stay there for decades. The park knows this. It lists every open case on its website, which is either transparency or a warning. If you are finding this interesting so far, drop a thumbs up and let us know in the comments which of these locations disturbs you the most. We read every single one. And if you have ever driven past a trailhead that just felt wrong, tell us about it. Your stories help us find new locations for future videos. We are only halfway through, and the stories ahead get darker. Number 6. Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The Boy Behind the Bush. The most visited national park in America. 13 million people a year. And on Father's Day weekend in 1969, a 6-year-old boy named Dennis Martin hid behind a bush during a game of hide-and-seek and set off the largest search in the park's history. Dennis was playing with other children at Spence Field near the Appalachian Trail. He wore a bright red shirt. The kids planned to jump out and surprise the adults. 3 children emerged. Dennis did not. 5 minutes. That is all it took. His father ran nearly 2 miles down the trail looking for him. Then the rain came. 3 inches in a matter of hours, washing out trails and flooding streams. What followed was a search involving 1,400 people across 56 square miles. The National Guard. The FBI. 71 Green Berets. They found nothing. A tourist named Harold Key reported hearing an enormous, sickening scream that afternoon and then seeing an unkempt, shaggy man carrying what appeared to be red cloth about 5 miles from where Dennis disappeared. Park officials concluded there was insufficient evidence to connect the sighting. The case was never solved. It did, however, force the National Park Service to completely overhaul its search and rescue protocols nationwide. Trenny Lynn Gibson, 16, vanished from a school field trip in the same park in 1976. 5 people in total have disappeared from the Great Smoky Mountains since 1934 and have never been found. 13 million visitors a year. And the mountains still keep what they take. Entry 6. Approximately 244 words. Heavy. Number 5. Lake Superior's Shipwreck Coast. The lake that never gives up her dead. There is a saying in the Great Lakes. Superior never gives up her dead. The water is so cold, averaging 40 degrees Fahrenheit, that the gases that would normally cause a body to float never form. What sinks, stays. And a great deal has sunk. Lake Superior holds an estimated 550 known shipwrecks. Roughly 200 of them lie along an 80-mile stretch of Michigan's Upper Peninsula between Munising and Whitefish Point, a corridor with no natural harbor that has earned the name the Graveyard of the Great Lakes. Across all 5 Great Lakes, an estimated 30,000 lives have been lost. In 1902, the steel freighter SS Bannockburn vanished with its crew of 21. No wreckage, no bodies, nothing was ever recovered. Within years, sailors began reporting sightings of the ship drifting through fog. They called it the Flying Dutchman of the Great Lakes. In 1975, the Edmund Fitzgerald, a 729-foot modern freighter with full radar and radio, sank with all 29 crew just 17 miles from Whitefish Point. The cause has never been definitively established. In 1953, an F-89 Scorpion jet scrambled from Kinross Air Force Base to intercept an unidentified object over the lake. Radar operators watched the jet close in on the target. The 2 blips merged on the screen, and then the plane was gone. The object continued north before vanishing. Neither the aircraft nor its 2-man crew was ever found. The Whitefish Point Shipwreck Museum is open seasonally. The Edmund Fitzgerald's bell, recovered in 1995, is on display. The lake is right outside. It looks calm until it does not. Number 4. The Superstition Mountains. The mountains that kill for gold. 40 miles east of Phoenix, a 160,200-acre volcanic range rises out of the Sonoran Desert. The Acamel-o-Autumn people told stories of strange sounds, mysterious deaths, and people disappearing into these peaks. Settlers in the 1800s named them the Superstition Mountains. And then the gold legend started. Jacob Waltz, a German immigrant, allegedly discovered a rich mine in the range in the 1870s. On his deathbed in 1891, he reportedly described its location to his neighbor, Julia Thomas. She searched for it, never found it, no one has, but people keep dying while they try. In the summer of 1931, treasure hunter Adolph Ruth disappeared in the Superstitions. His skull was found 6 months later. It had 2 bullet holes in it. The coroner's jury ruled no evidence of foul play. The headless remains of prospector James Cravey turned up in the mid-1940s. In 2010, 3 hikers from Utah set out to find the mine and went missing. Their bodies were recovered months later. Hypothermia. In 2009, Jesse Kappen disappeared. His remains were found in 2013 at the base of a cliff. According to the former president of the Superstition Mountain Museum, an average of 4 to 5 hikers die in these mountains every year. Lost Dutchman State Park sits at the base. You can hike the Peralta Trail and see Weaver's Needle, the volcanic spire believed to mark the mine's location. People still search. The mountains still collect. Number 3. Roanoke Island. Croatoan. One word. That is all they left behind. In July 1587, roughly 117 English colonists landed on Roanoke Island, a small strip of land off the North Carolina coast, to establish the first permanent English settlement in the New World. Among them was Eleanor Dare, who gave birth to Virginia Dare on August 18th, the first child born of English parents in the Americas. Virginia's grandfather, Governor John White, sailed back to England for supplies a few days later. The Anglo-Spanish War trapped him there. He did not return until 1590. 3 years. When White finally reached the island, the settlement was fortified but abandoned. No bodies, no bones, no signs of a struggle. Just the word Croatoan carved into a palisade post and CRO etched into a nearby tree. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and its friendly indigenous inhabitants, now called Hatteras Island. White assumed his colonists had relocated there, but rough seas and a lost anchor forced him back to England. He never saw his daughter, his son-in-law, or his granddaughter again. Archaeologists have since found English artifacts on Hatteras Island, rapier hilts, gun hardware, a slate tablet from the correct time period. In 2012, a hidden fort symbol was discovered under a patch on White's original 1585 map at the British Museum. The prevailing theory is that the colonists split up and assimilated into nearby tribes. Fort Riley National Historic Site is open year-round. The Lost Colony, an outdoor drama based on the story, has run since 1937, the longest of its kind in the United States. 439 years later, the word still hangs in the air. Number 2. Glacier National Park. The crown of the continent takes what it wants. At least 12 people have walked into Glacier National Park in northwestern Montana and never walked out. Their bodies were never recovered. The cases stretch back to 1924, when Joseph and William Whitehead both vanished on the same day. The park contains over 700 miles of trails, 762 lakes, 25 active glaciers, and terrain carved by ice into knife-edge ridges and vertical cliff bands. 3 million visitors come through every year. The park's own chief ranger, Paul Austin, put it plainly. People that want to be found, he said, we clearly still cannot find them, just because of the amazing landscape we have here. The cliffs, the water, the vegetation. Larry Kimball disappeared in May 2003 near the Fish Creek area of Lake McDonald, which drops off steeply from shore. Wildfires later scorched the terrain where he may have wandered. Yi Jian Hua vanished above Avalanche Lake in 2008. His remains were not found until 4 years later. Avalanche Lake is one of the most popular hiking destinations in the park. Thousands of people walk past it every summer. Hua was there the entire time. Going to the Sun Road is still one of the most stunning drives in North America. The glaciers are retreating and projected to largely disappear within the next 2 decades. The beauty is not permanent, but the disappearances keep their schedule. Number 1. The Bennington Triangle, the mountain that collects people. From Bennington, the road narrows, pavement gives way to gravel. Then gravel gives way to trail. Then the trail disappears into forest that has been growing, uninterrupted, for 100 years. The air goes still. The trees close overhead. There are no views from the summit of Glastonbury Mountain. Just dense canopy, silence, and the feeling that the woods are paying attention. This is the Bennington Triangle, 93 square miles of southwestern Vermont wilderness, centered on a mountain whose surrounding towns were so thoroughly abandoned that the state legislature dissolved their governments in 1937. Glastonbury was once a logging boomtown. By the early 20th century, the timber was gone, the charcoal kilns were cold, and the people had left. The forest took it all back. And then, between 1945 and 1950, 5 people vanished. Mitty Rivers was first, a 74-year-old hunting guide who knew every ridge and hollow in these mountains. On November 12, 1945, he was leading a group of 4 hunters through the area of Hell Hollow. He walked ahead of the group and was gone. They found a single rifle cartridge and a handkerchief that may have been his. That was it. On December 1st, 1946, Paula Jean Weldon, an 18-year-old Bennington College sophomore, went hiking on the long trail in a bright red jacket. She was seen by multiple witnesses. An elderly couple walked behind her for a time. She turned a corner on the ridge, and she was gone. Over 1,000 people searched. The FBI came. A $5,000 reward was posted. Her disappearance inspired Shirley Jackson to write the novel, Hainesman, and directly led to the creation of the Vermont State Police. Exactly 3 years to the day after Weldon, James Tedford, a 68-year-old veteran, boarded a bus in St. Albans headed for Bennington. Multiple passengers confirmed he was in his seat as late as the last stop before town. When the bus pulled in, his seat was empty. His luggage was still in the overhead rack. An open bus timetable lay on the seat. He was one of 14 people on that bus. Not one of them saw him leave. In October 1950, 8-year-old Paul Jepson vanished while his mother tended pigs at the Bennington town dump. A bloodhound tracked his scent along a road to an intersection. There the trail stopped. 16 days later, experienced hiker Frida Langer, 53, disappeared near the Somerset Reservoir. Her body was found 7 months later in an area that had been thoroughly searched multiple times. The cause of death could not be determined. Author Joseph Citro gave the cluster its name during a Vermont public radio broadcast in 1992. He called it the Bennington Triangle, borrowing the structure from the Bermuda Triangle. The Abenaki people had their own name for it. They believed Glastonbury Mountain was cursed. An enchanted stone in their folklore was said to swallow anything that stepped on it. Today the long trail still passes over the summit. There is a fire tower up there. Glastonbury has 8 official residents. There is no plaque in Bennington, no memorial, no sign. 5 people walked into these woods across 5 years, and the mountain gave back exactly 1. Even that one, it hid for 7 months in a spot everyone had already checked. The bus timetable on Tedford's empty seat may be the most unsettling image in American missing persons history. A man reading his schedule for a trip he was about to complete and then just not being there anymore. The seat still warm, the page still open. There are roughly 90,000 missing persons in the United States at any given time. Most are found, some are not. The 12 places on this list are the ones where not seems to happen more than it should, in terrain that does not give up its secrets easily and sometimes does not give them up at all. For me, it is the Bennington Triangle, a man vanishing from a moving bus and leaving his timetable open on the seat. That one will stay with me. Which of these locations unsettled you the most, and which ones did we miss? Let us know in the comments. If you want more stories about the places no one talks about, subscribe. We will keep looking for them.